move into the future. We have Ole Kjeldsen here from Microsoft, and he's going to take us talk a little bit about trends of technologies.
Thank you. Good morning. Great with a Norwegian presenting one, so you can actually pronounce my last name. You should forget about my last name. It's not pronounceable by anybody but Danes and Norwegians, I think. My name is, where do we have a clicker? Over here. My name is Ole. At full disclosure, I am only learning about your domain. I'm absolutely not an expert on NGO domain. I've been learning a lot the past few days, and it's been very interesting. But I want to thank you, say thank you to Frederick and David for helping me tweak some of the content from this presentation here. And overall, of course, I want to thank NetHope for giving us the opportunity to give this talk. While I'm not a domain expert, I am somewhat of a enthusiast when it comes to technology. Being the National Technology Officer from Denmark, it does help a bit. The content I'm going to show you today is, some of it is going to be quite fast. I'm going to go over it pretty fast. There are going to be a few videos. There are going to be some a large amount of pictures as well. And you will, of course, get access to this afterwards. The file itself is humongous, so you'll get a PDF, but there'll be links to all the YouTube videos that I'm using there, if any of it interests you in reusing. I should say right away that, of course, I try to connect this to your domain. Again, I am not the expert. I try to connect it. Hopefully, I can give you a couple of new thoughts and new ideas about what's happening in the world of technology and how it will influence your world. But I really much rely on you making some of these connections. Feel free to ask along the way if you need. The red line there indicates the amount of things I think I can reach to in 45 minutes. There's a ton of extra material that'll be in the handout afterwards. So, this could easily be a picture of me and my kids. Size-wise, of course, it doesn't really fit, but I am, like I said, a technology enthusiast, and I really jump at any opportunity I get to use new technology. And I've been doing this for 30, 40 years. And luckily, I bring a lot of my connections, my network with me, and of all ages and all demographies. So, what I'm going to spend the 45 minutes on, as an overarching theme, of course, Microsoft has a mission, and our mission is about empowerment. I'm going to touch on that quite briefly, because it's a big part of the transformation that we as a company is going through. Now, we've talked a lot about disruption. Lauren gave a great talk yesterday, and David as well today, talking about some of the disruptions going on in the tech industry. I'm going to show you how this affects all industries and hopefully connect it to NGO domain as well. So the effect really happens both in a personal and a professional world, and I'll give you examples on that. Hopefully at the end you'll be left with a sense that some of these disruptive technologies can actually give you some opportunities to make use of the changes, get some positive effects out of the disruption. Now, these two young, at that time, very young, Mr. Gates actually just turned 60 the other day, but these very nice-looking young men founded the company on a mission that we wanted to put a PC or a computer on every desk in every home. This, of course, has been reached years ago, and we've now moved in with our new CEO, Satya Nadella, moved into a world where we don't talk about computers, we don't talk about IT as such, we don't talk about if it's a Windows, if it's a Mac, if it's Android, it's iOS. It doesn't matter what technology, what platform you use. Our mission is to empower every person and every organization, anywhere they are on the planet, to achieve more. This could be done in multiple ways. Of course, we believe that software is a great part of this equation, something that needs to be handled. And I'll illustrate a bit about how that's happening right now. Because the world is changing, and it's changing in so many ways, but one thing that is increasingly apparent to everybody is that the amount of change, the frequency of the change happening, and the effect of change is rapid. We're getting higher and higher frequency of some of the changes that affects us all in all that we do. And the world that we live in today is really connected with mobile scenarios. It's connected with cloud computing. Thank you to those who attended our cloud computing security session yesterday. It's connected with big data. We've just seen a great presentation on how big data and actually looking into big data and finding those small patterns that actually make sense of all the big data. And of course, the illustration there, the grid, is to illustrate the Internet of Things, the rapid growth of connected devices that will only increase the big data that we have up there. And of course, cybersecurity, making sure that this all happens with respect to cybersecurity, with respect to your privacy and your beneficiaries' privacy. This is the world we live in today, and this is all based on what I call 3 disruptive forces. These are laws, quote unquote. We all know Moore's law, I'm sure. Most of you know Metcalfe's law as well. It's fun if you have a phone. It's even more fun if 2 guys have a phone. It's not just 3 times as more fun. It's exponentially more fun when the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th person has a phone. That's the law of Metcalfe, law of network effect. But Kume's law is not very well known. And that's a very important law, especially in terms of mobile devices and cloud computing as well. Kume's law describes that we can, just like Moore's law, we can with a less and less amount of power actually do the same and even more computing. This empowers us to do real Internet of Things where we can have devices that can run on a battery for years and still provide data, still add to the amount of data that we can then analyze. And to analyze all these explosive set of data, we need the cloud, because otherwise we simply don't have enough computing power to do the analysis. And cloud computing only makes sense if we can still run them at a sustainable level that still have a close to 0 carbon footprint. And that's where Kume's law is guiding us as well. So 3 laws to think of, and Moore's law is basically the only one we always talk about, and there is a reason for that. And that's the exponential factor. This, I'm sorry if you can't read the axis, it doesn't really matter. 50 years ago, Gordon Moore from Intel noted down the Moore's law of computing, or of actually integrated circuits, that he believed that every 18 months we were going to see a doubling of the amount of compute power that was coming, or actually circuits on an IC. So we were doubling the amount of computing we could do for the same buck, and maybe even less. This law has proven to be, well, not linear, because this is how we normally see Moore's law, that we have a nice progression of what we can do computing-wise. But this is how it's actually looking. This is a true exponential growth over the past 50 years since Gordon Moore founded the law. But our minds are so used to linear thinking. If I take 5 steps, I will have walked 5 yards. That's linear. If I talk about exponential growth, it's very different. But look at the curve and look at where we are today. If we look back 5, 10 years, we think the amount of change, we think the amount of disruption that's happened based on technology has been amazing. It's breathtaking. Sometimes it's even things we can't really consider. We're trying to hide it away because we can't consume it all. Look at the amount of change that we've actually, in this great perspective, we haven't seen nothing yet. We're actually now at an inflection point where every step up the ladder in the exponential growth will give us amazing new progress. The best way to illustrate this is actually, I think, the steps. I take about 1 yard every time I take a step. So if I take 5 steps this way, it'll be 5 meters. But if I took 5 exponential steps, it would get me much further. Actually, if I start walking with the exponential steps from New York, the 23rd step would bring me right outside San Francisco. The 24th step would bring me past Hawaii. That's the exponential growth. That's what's really driving the technology trends and the technology disruption that we see right now. So nothing linear about it. At the verge of something even more disruptive than what we've seen so far. Now, the technology and the development that we've seen over the past, let's say, 10, 15 years have created some tremendous problems. The image you see on the left is actually a highway in China. It was 100 kilometers long. It took more than, I think, 3 days to dissolve. And the intersection you see on the right is from Ethiopia. It's not photoshopped in any way. Now, people tell me I'm not really a cautious driver, but I think I'd be challenged if I went into that intersection. So no doubt that technology has brought us many issues. This is not to shoot at China or Ethiopia, because I'm sure I could find intersections, even in Denmark, a well-regulated country with great traffic controls, that would scare some of you. But just think that, if you think back to the Moore's law, think back to the curve and where we are and the change, the amount of change that we are just at the verge of. Think about what technology can then do to solve some of these problems. If we have a look at this, this has been photoshopped. This is not a real intersection. But just imagine what technology you could do to solve some of the same issues. Wouldn't it be great if you could just walk into an intersection thinking all the cars are well regulated, they're actually handled by software, the algorithm will make sure. I just love this runner. Now, if we take this to the ultimate conclusion, this would actually, if we can do this, and I believe we can, this would mean that right now, the first person in the world has been born who are not allowed to get a driver's license. Because why would we even want humans with our brains, with our tendency to sometimes forget our brains and just go, let's use our backbone. Why would we even want people to drive? Why don't we want software? Why don't we want algorithms to control that part of our environment, that part of our infrastructure? Because we could, as a society, definitely benefit from this. So, full disclosure again, of course, I am a Dane. I'm the local technology officer, so some of the cases you're going to see up here are going to be local. Berlingske is a news organization. I think it's more than 300 years old. It was Norwegian and Danish. Lisbeth is the former, and she is former. She wasn't fired for what she said here, but she was just fired a couple of weeks ago. She has been at the spearhead. She has been the spearhead in the transformation that Berlingske has been going through the past 10 years. They have completely changed their company, and this is a speech she gave just a couple of weeks ago, where she started saying, "Look, at Berlingske, nothing has changed. The digital disruption, yeah, we heard about it. Us, nothing changed. Except, of course, for how we do the journalism, how we produce the content, how we distribute the content." And she went on, and she went on, and she went on. Because, of course, it happens to all businesses. I know media is very normal that we think about the digital disruption in the media world. But it's not just media. If you look at the biggest retailer in the world today, Alibaba Group, they don't have any storage. They're a retailer. They have tons of goods, but they don't store them because they're just the broker. If you look at Facebook, they're the biggest media company in the world. They don't produce any content. Airbnb, biggest hotel chain, they don't have any rooms. And of course, Uber, as we all know, they don't have any cars, but they're the biggest taxi company in the world. This is digital disruption on 4 different industries. It will happen to all industries, no doubt about it. But again, what we hear from a lot of customers, what we hear from a lot of people, is stuff like this. Disruption doesn't happen here. We only produce physical goods. We can't do this. We can't do that. Because that's how we are wired as human beings. We don't like change. You probably have seen this comic. Who wants change? Do you want to change? People normally don't. We're wired like this. We don't like the change. We like what we have. We're challenged if we need to change. So a lot of us do this. It certainly happens. But it doesn't matter. The car's still going to hit you. It's only your head that's in the ground. So how do we normally regulate this? And this is a true example. Back in 1894, in the UK, they enacted what they call the Highway and Locomotive Act. The automobile, the new technology, was just coming into Britain. They enacted a law saying we need somebody with a red flag walking at least 50 meters in front of every automobile, warning the horse carriages that now new technology is coming. We don't know it's a menace. We don't know what's going to happen. They can only go 4 miles per hour in the countryside, and they can go 2 miles per hour in the cities. But they need a physical guide to warn everybody that new technology is coming. This was actually only in effect 3 years, then they realize, well, maybe we're kind of holding back on new technology. Maybe we can actually get some opportunities out of this new automobile. But this is how we react as human beings. We try to block, we try to do restrictive regulations. I'm not saying we shouldn't regulate. Absolutely we should regulate. We all, us that run commercial businesses, we thrive under regulation as long as it makes sense and it still takes into account the disruptive nature of new technology. And it's really hard doing regulations, we know, especially when thinking about Moore's Law and thinking about what's coming, the large disruption that we see. But we need to think, I'm not a fan of this guy, I have to admit. Not many people are, but he does have some good points. Jack Welch once said, if you look outside your company, the market you're in, your organization, and you look at the inside of the organization, and you see the amount of change not being in balance, and hopefully even more change inside your organization than your surrounding environment, you're on the road to oblivious. And he has a point, because if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, the past 50 years, 83% are gone. 83% of Fortune 500 companies the past 50 years have vanished. They're simply not a company anymore. Only 17% have survived. And those are the ones that are able to change, able to embrace disruptive technologies. Now, we always talk about millennials, people who are born after 85. Sometimes I feel like I am born after 85. Being being passionate about technology, of course, sometimes people mistake me. They only have to take one look, and they know. But I do believe a lot in diversity. So think about bringing not just young people into your organization. We always talk about millennials as being our employees, our next employees that has to push us and move us. They're not just our employees. They're your customers. They're your beneficiaries. They're all over. So even though you might not have the most diverse employee setup, you still have a lot of connections with millennials who are so used to working mobile, only working mobile, always moving around, always collaborating, always sharing. And it doesn't have to be only millennials. I am sure that many of you have picked up new ways of working, new ways of sharing, new ways of collaborating. You've all picked up smartphones and the idea behind being mobile when you work. So no doubt this is a huge, oh, I sound like some presidential candidate, huge in the US right now. So the world is definitely a huge network. No doubt that we have to take into consideration Metcalfe's law and making sure that we make the most of all the connections that is now in place in networks. But what it also brings with it are these images. You've probably seen some of these. This is the first, or not the first, in 2005, the former Popal inauguration, and then 8 years later, this is how it looked. We all know why, and it's sad really that we experience the world through these devices. But nevertheless, the point of this is, well, there's something to say about the social side of it, but the point of it is huge amount of data being sucked up there and being deposited in cloud solutions. But we unfortunately also see this, a little bit of a Danish lesson as well. It's a Danish cartoon, taking a picture, and my translation up there, there's been an accident, somebody do something, call 911 now, because I'm filming it. I can't do anything. Of course, that's also what we see, unfortunately. But the purpose of showing you these cartoons is, of course, what Lauren was talking about as well yesterday. We have a huge increase in the number of devices picking up data capable of supporting your business and your organization. You don't have to read the details here, but the lighter shaded part of the curve there are PCs, tablets, smartphones. Every prediction from all the analysts are saying that they are still increasing. If we look at the developing world, they are, of course, investing as well in more and more of these screen-based devices. We are going to hit, at some point, even 6 billion devices being sold every year. That's the predictions. In 2020, however, the gray area of the curve is really where the big growth is coming. And that's where we get our big data sets from. Those are the non-screen-based devices, those that are powered by Comey's law, making sure that they get a battery and they only consume very little power, so they can stay in focus, stay in effect for years to come. And we will see a surge of these devices. Predictions, some say 40, some say 100 billion devices. Most agree on, let's say in 2020, we at least passed 20 billion connected devices, sensors, smartphones, Fitbits, Apple Watches, Microsoft Bands, whatever you'd like, all kinds of sensors picking up data. And this increasing amount of data, it's not exponential, but it's very close to exponential. IBM did not a survey, they did a report a couple of years back where they said, look, of all the digital data that has ever been stored, ever, human history, 80% has been created within the last 2 years. Of all digital data, 80% is created within the last 2 years. And all predictions tell us that by 2020, we'll have zettabytes of data. Zettabytes of data. This is unfathomable how big data sets, such big data sets we're talking about here. Two things about that. There's only one place to store this. It has to be in the cloud. If you want to do it with economies of scale, it has to be done in the cloud. It's the only place where you dollar for dollar, cent for cent, can actually afford to store these data. But that's just storing it. That's just dumb data. You don't get anything from dumb data. Like Lauren was saying yesterday, like Eric and David just showed us, it's when you do the analysis, it's when you look for the small patterns in the huge data sets that you get the value. And again, you need the cloud for that. We saw a great solution for doing data visualization just before. I'll have a few links if some of you know Hans Rosling, Swedish professor from Karolinska Institute. Amazing guy working on data visualization, looking at big data sets and looking at correlations between data sets you wouldn't imagine had any correlations. There's a few links in the appendices to some of his great work. All based on how do we do analysis. And that's exactly what our CEO, Satya Nadella, again said. Look, if we know this, we know that data is only growing at an increasing rate. And we know that you all have access to computing in your hand. You all have a ton of opportunities. The scarce factor, the scarcity is only in your attention and your time. So what we work on in Microsoft and in our partners is to make sure that you get just the amount of information out of all that data at the right time, at the right device. So of course there has to be a bit of product placement here from Microsoft. We believe, of course, that not it has to be Windows, but we believe that there is a Windows version, there is a device, there is a scenario where Windows will make sense. From the Raspberry Pi in the top left to the HoloLens in the right, they all run the same operating system. They all run the same engine capable of communicating with all these connected devices and analyzing the huge amount of data. We already see that the HoloLens, with the developer kit going out now, we see people using this in training scenarios. We see, of course, military using it for remote controlling. We see more mundane use as training in education, and I could easily see rescue workers using HoloLens as a training tool as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on products. I know that's not why you're here. You'll get a more thorough rundown of what Windows 10 is capable of from my colleague Martin, who's going to be giving a session tomorrow on that. Same thing for Office, the tool of choice for billions of people around the world, where we've just released the newest versions with a ton of new capabilities, and especially one I want to highlight is on the Works for You part. Lauren was talking yesterday about machine learning, about predictive analytics. The fact that we now have so much compute power and we have so much data that machine learning can make use of and serve up information to you. Maybe information you didn't know you needed. And that's what we try to do in Office 365 in the latest version. We try to, with functions like Delve, I'm going to show you a video now of what we call the Office Brain. There is some talk going on in the back. We don't have sound on this, so I'll just talk over the video here. The idea here is that in Office 365, if your organization, all your employees are using Office 365, they do a ton of work in all different kinds of applications, in Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Skype, whatever they create, whatever they consume is part of their sphere. These are the projects I work on. They have these metadata. Office 365 and Delve is then capable of using the machine learning engine, trying to figure out who else in your organization is working on similar things, things that might be of interest to you, but you might not know them. They might not be part of your network. Why not serve that up as a predictive, as a suggestion for you, saying, we think this might be of interest to you. So here you see that it serves up cards of stuff that might be of interest to you. These are colleagues working on similar things. Some of the same metadata are in their work. Some of the same keywords are in their work. You might know them, you might not work with them. Here you are, you can like it or you can dislike it. If you dislike it, we mark that and say, okay, that's never going to be interesting for you again then. And we're not going to serve that up. But if you like stuff, okay, that's part of the whole Office brain. We now know a little bit more about you. We can do better predictive analytics and try to help you do your work even better. So taking advantage of huge data sets, doing cloud machine learning, and then predict how you should be served new things. Another thing, another technology that you can now go out and try, Skype Translator. If you haven't tried it, hopefully all of you use Skype. I know a huge part of the Danish population use Skype, maybe because of the Danish founder, but Skype is absolutely an amazing tool, which has just become even more amazing. Skype Translator has been a beta product for a year and a half. We've been using it, some of us internally, but we only just last month publicly released it. So you can now download a plugin to Skype, allowing you to do translations on the fly. This is really bad without the sound. You wouldn't hear this guy. He's German, and he only speaks German. What Skype Translator does, it picks up his German. It writes at the bottom, it writes what it understood in German, and then it synthesizes an English voice. It does this in 5 languages: Spanish, 1 Chinese, I think Mandarin, French, Italian, German, and English. And of course, we're adding languages all the time. This is what can be done now because of Moore's law, because of cloud computing. We can now, on the fly, translate German, French, whatever, into the language of the receiver. And it does it real time. There's no delay, no latency whatsoever. I would love to be able to say there was Arabic in this as well. That is a huge next step. These 2 videos are just some of the, not the final ones, but some of the last ones I want to show you. Stuff that I think is happening out now, and again is at the verge of breaking through, verge of having an impact also in an NGO domain. On the left, you see a video of the Maker movement. MakerBot is just one producer of 3D printing. What you would hear him say is, look, MakerBot is already printing human organs. They're printing blood vessels. They're actually printing food as well. They can now print with biological material that can be eaten and give you nutrition. These are, well, it looks like candy, but it is actually calories that you pick up. Yeah. On the right, robotics. Robotics we've talked about at least for 15 years that I've been with Microsoft, but that is absolutely at the verge of breaking through. This is the DARPA Robotic Challenge that's been going on for years. These are the Korean winners. The robot that you see there, this is, I should say, this is a time-lapse video. It's 6 minutes long. You have the link at the bottom there. So 6 minutes, and it's time-lapsed. It took the robot, I think, 28 to 30 minutes to go through all the exercises. But the exercises were very practical. As you can see here, had to turn a valve, close a valve, had to take out a plug from one wall socket and put it into another wall socket. So very much, let's say, disaster recovery scenarios where it's easy to see how robots could move people out of harm's way and have us use drones for some good. In that respect. I won't allow you to see the whole video here. You will get the link in the presentation. Another use of new technology, and this is actually an old video. I don't know if anybody's seen it before, but it's an old video. This is an actual, yes, that is blood on his hands. It's a surgeon at a UK hospital a London hospital, that found out, well, I need to look at X-rays while I'm doing surgery. I need to zoom in and out because I'm actually using a video camera for exposing the area that I do surgery on, but I need to stay sterile. Normally, he would shout to a nurse that could then hold up the X-rays, but instead they installed a Kinect, a consumer device, a $100 consumer device. They installed and had a partner build a solution where with just gestures, this surgeon can, while he does the operation, using gestures, can switch through X-rays, he can zoom in, zoom out, he can control the video camera without touching anything. He can continue his surgery staying sterile. These kinds of solutions, using technology in an area you wouldn't believe we could use technology that is consumer grade. Now, those of you who don't believe me when I say that self-driving cars is just around the corner, normally when I say Volvo and I say cars, people say, yeah, safety. Safety first. They might not be good looking. 80-20, sorry. No, you're not Swedish, so that's fine. But one thing people always think about when it's Volvo, it's safety. They invented the safety belt. Now, Volvo has created a project called Drive Me. And as you will see here, it's unfortunate you can't hear the speaker, but you'll get the video. By January 2017, Volvo will have 100 self-driving cars on the streets of Gothenburg, only 180 miles from here. So Volvo, the safety car of the world, is running self-driving cars in a Swedish city by 2017, early 2017. This technology is coming before we know it. I think the biggest challenge is in our minds, and it's of course in having self-driving cars together with all the rest of us who can't figure out how to drive safely. So believe me when I say technology is here absolutely to disrupt any business. It's here to, of course, introduce risks, but the main risk is in our heads. It's understanding how exponential growth can help us solve some of the issues that we're all addressing and we're all experiencing day in and day out. But in summary, it will happen. We and our partners drive all we can to make use of the opportunities that are in technology disruption. It is a breathtaking experience year by year and seeing how much new technology we're capable of making into some of our products. And I just want to end with saying you don't even have to go that far. Some of the technology disruptions that I've talked about, Lauren talked about, and others have talked about on this conference, it's already in some of the products that you can go out. It's in the shelf products. It's in the network of more than 400,000 partners in Microsoft ecosystem that is already building new technology based on these capabilities. So no need in waiting. It's right out there waiting for you. I always end with a couple of book recommendations if you want some inspiration on what to read when it comes to technology and disruption. Now, the book on the right, The Innovator's Dilemma, is absolutely the Bible for anybody in technology. If it isn't, they shouldn't be in technology. This talks about, well, basically what happened to Microsoft, what happened to Kodak, what happened to Gillette, what happened to a lot of companies, not just IT. It is an absolutely amazing book. How old it might be, it's an amazing book. The newest I've added is on the left, Automate This, which is really about machine learning, which is really about how we let algorithms run our lives. Big part of our financial sector is already run by algorithms, for better or for worse. But there's no doubt algorithms and machine learning, predictive analytics based on the way we use cloud computing today is going to change most of our lives, if not all. So just some recommendations. And again, you will get a PDF with this presentation and all the links. If you want to get in touch with me, these are my contacts, or you can, of course, download my contact information scanning the QR code there. I think I made up for 11 minutes.
You did.
Great.
Beautifully. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Uli. This reminds me of my early Microsoft days. I was out there doing something similar on a circuit. And the presentation I was making was called Roadkill on the Information Superhighway.